but Coinbase is the option that everyone's choosing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the easiest one. Nobody gets fired for choosing Coinbase, right? Like when you're dealing with like other corporate entities, like, you know, you can go with a different one, and then if that goes wrong, why didn't you choose best in class? It's ugly.
Custody is a hot potato, and in a way, you could argue anyone doing Bitcoin custody is in the business of holding the hot potato. And you know, with the repeal of SOB, what is it, SOB 121?
Yeah.
I always forget the number. You know, people predicted, lots of banks would be custodying Bitcoin, but I forget who I was talking to recently, and they laid out a really good argument about like why that hasn't happened and why that is unlikely to happen. And I'm generally sympathetic to that, which is if you think about how a conversation has to go at an existing financial institution to decide to start custodying Bitcoin, right? You have somebody in there championing it, going, hey, we should custody Bitcoin. We should custody this asset. And then you have some like risk committee review, right? Going, okay, well, like what are the risks with this? Well, okay, this is actually, you know, a bearer asset. It's an asset like we've never had to deal with before in the history of this institution. We have no institutional knowledge about how to do this. And if we mess up, that's coming off of our balance sheet, by the way. Right? So you have this unknown thing that if we mess up, it's game over for the company, right? You know, if they just accumulate a few $1 billion worth of deposits in Bitcoin and something happens, they, you know, that they're dead.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think they go like, well, this really isn't worth it. And that's probably what's happening.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the two other points add to this. So one, banks in particular, oftentimes they're sort of one of the key metrics is sort of what's the return on equity, like how much money are you generating, you know, for your equity. And we mentioned, you know, fractional reserve before, but like these banks are literally incentivized to kind of run as lean as possible in terms of you know what their equity is, and try to maintain that optimal fraction. Point one, point two. Banks aren't exactly in the business of custodying legacy securities either. There's a whole consortium where they all came together to create DTCC, basically just to say, all right, none of us actually wants to hold this hot potato.
Yeah.
So we're all going to create this. And by the way, we're talking about like a private ledger where they basically, when you're issuing these securities, it's like you're calling up DTC, be like, hey, can you just like create a little thing for us in your database and, you know, keep hold of it there. And so, yeah, the banks aren't exactly in the business of custodying legacy assets either.
CD & Co.
CD & Co, is that the parent co for DTCC?
No, that's like the entity that owns the shares. DTCC manages sort of the ledger, but it's owned by CD & Co.
Oh, right.
Some ancient lore. I used to work for Digital Asset Holdings back in 2015, and we had a meeting with DTCC to do like blockchain bullshit for their company. And they kind of clocked it pretty quickly. They're like, how is this any different than what we currently do? And I was like, it's not.
Well, the other thing too is like
just introducing a lot of risk.
Yeah, like you don't even want it to be sort of this like private decentralized blockchain, because the whole, one of the nice aspects, sorry, it's not nice. It can be weaponized, as we've seen. And this is why Bitcoin exists. But if there is a benefit, it's sort of the convenience benefit of like, if a financial institution fucks up their you know, take backs, where it's like, oh, this is my bad, we're gonna like, you know, can you just undo this one? Like they're familiar with the Ethereum rewind the ledger. They do this many times. I think it's also it's interesting too with your point around it being a hot potato, because even though custody is such a hot potato, the money you get from custodying is it's nothing. Like the custody fees these days are just going down and down and down. Yeah. So it's one of these weird examples of like, it's a hot potato that you're not even paid to hold.
No, you have to monetize it with adjacent services. Like for a
they
consumer
business, do it for free for BlackRock, right? A big account like that. Like I would be surprised.
I don't think it's free. I don't think it's free. I think it's just
it's pretty slim.
It's probably single digit bips if I had to guess.
Yeah.
But consumers aren't even willing to pay custody fees.
When BlackRock shows up, you just say, "Yeah, I'll do that for free."
Yeah. I mean, you monetize the trading volume, right?
Sure.
And in many ways, if you just look at Coinbase's enterprise business, it's actually quite a small percentage of their overall business. You know, you could argue that, sure, it's an investment in the future, but also it's really just like locking their brand in, right, as the winner.
Yeah.
And like, it's not, the value isn't necessarily even in the business itself of serving these large, sophisticated financial institutions. It's just in having that, locked in as part of their brand.